I'm Janessa. I'm going to have you come sign in right over here. No worries. We're going to have a lot of drifters coming in. And I really enjoy all art media. So I teach charcoal, watercolor, acrylic, and also paint that as well. In the back of the room, I have a little bin of prints and some ideas, so you kind of get an idea. You can look through it whenever you need to take a break, or at the end of this time, so you can kind of see some stuff I do. I will give you some more marketing materials and tell you some more things, how I can help and assist. This class is a workshop, meaning what I'm going to do is go through a whole bunch of techniques, and we're going to be using small paper first, then we're going to go to bigger paper, and then it is taped on boards. So I'm going to talk about different techniques on watercolor, and I'm going to give you options in what you are able to paint. Now, some of you are advanced, some of you are intermediate, and some of you never picked up a paintbrush. So your options are going to be lots of different things. Can everybody see my TV? I might need to close those blinds in the back. Is there a glare in the TV? Can I stand here then? Yep. That's fine, because I'm really going to be right here. Will that work? So that is an octopus. There is a flamingo option. This is for your final. So I'm going to go over this again, so don't panic. And then here's an option to paint a seahorse. And then I also have the option to paint my favorite guy, which I advertised to you all, to bake a sea turtle. Okay? And do not panic if you do not know how to draw. I teach you how to draw, how to sketch, and I have cheating tools. So what we're going to do is go through all the techniques so you can see how the watercolors will work. If you are experienced, that's fine. Please help others around you, collaborate, and we're all just going to learn some untraditional ways of doing watercolor. So at the end of class, I will give you the option, if you want, to take this watercolor term sheet. So this watercolor term sheet will have all the terms, and I'm not going over all of this today, but it'll give you some more ideas, and you can Google it and look it up. I am working on YouTube channels and all that, so I will have instructions and subject matter that you can draw or paint with me online. So that's a thing I'm working on right now. I have lived in Florida for 2 years. I am from Denver, Colorado, and I love it here, and got called out here from Sarasota County to start a kids business because they had only crafting people. And I'm going to tell you, if you're crafty, good for you. I don't do crafts. I don't know how. I'm not good. So those are classes I would go to learn. So I would like to begin by asking you if you have a card that's folded on your table. Write your name on it so when I walk through, because I'm going to come and work with all of you together. And during this time of collaboration and learning and experimenting, if you have a question, you raise your hand, you shout it out, I will come help you. And Christine is a wonderful watercolorist as well. And as I said, she makes jewelry, so all her jewelry is over here that she brought some samples of to see what she makes, and she sells it as well. And
jewelry workshops.
Yes.
She does this, I teach jewelry workshops.
Mm-hmm. And sewing, or just kids?
No, that's kids.
Okay. Don't bring that up. So, is everybody okay with the TV? Can we see me? So what I'm going to do is work up here. We are going to start with these little pieces of paper, and everybody should have about 3. If you need more, that's fine. We'll work on that. So I want to kind of talk to you about how the watercolors work. These watercolors are cake watercolors, so when they're solid, and we want to keep them awake and alive the whole time while we're painting. So you're always going to be making sure you take one of your brushes And you're going to wake up your watercolors by dabbing water in it, and I'm just filling it up, rinse, rinse, dab, dab. Can you see the board? Yep. Okay. Sometimes technology works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And then you have this tray here. This tray is for making your own colors. So what I like to do is get these wet first. So let's go ahead and get started and get these wet. So I'm just filling them up with water. You want it to be a consistency of like tomato soup. So you always want to make sure there's water floating on the top and it's very puddly. Of course, it'll be very gooey because you do not want to dig your brushes into the paints at all. You have a variety of sizes of brushes. Part of the experiment with watercolors or painting period is finding brushes that you like. And I'll teach, come on in. Welcome, welcome. Move people around a little bit. So we're going to wake up our watercolors. And the first thing we're going to talk about is creating a flat wash, which is dry on wet. And then, wet on dry. And then we are going to talk about putting wet on wet. And when watercolors mix together, it's called bleeding. One thing you want to know about watercolors, if you have never painted before or haven't used it very often, you do not want to keep going over and over with a brush in the same area for too long. You want to let it go, and watercolors do their own thing. They dance. So wherever the water is, if you control the water and where things are, then you won't have the problem of stuff going everywhere and mixing and making mud colors or being out of boundaries. So we create our own boundaries with the watercolors, but we also let them do their own unique things because watercolors are very fascinating to create different designs and colors. So on your white piece of paper, before we do this tray idea, let's just start painting. So the idea is we're going to make a flat wash or a gradient. So do you see how it goes from darker to lighter? And then this is a flat wash. A flat wash is where it's all uniform color. So I would like you to use your big brush, and we're only going to use half the size of our paper. So everybody has a paper that looks like this. And when you look at watercolor paper, if you ever want to paint, I say at least do 140 pound and go higher. A pound in paper is the weight, and the thicker the better. But I like to use 140 as my starting point. That's what we're doing today. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my flat brush, which is this big fat one, and I'm going to get it wet. I've woken up my watercolors. So you guys are also sharing a little bit with each other, and if we need, I might have a couple more. But I have tons of supplies and tons of things, so we're just trying to give you table room space as well. So what I'm going to do is just pick a color of your choice. I'm going to pick purple just so you guys can see it better. I'm going to stay away from the edges, and all I'm going to do is try and make a flat wash going back and forth. And just make a square. It can be a rectangle. And I want you to practice staying away from the edges. So therefore, you are learning to control and seeing how you can make your own borders on things without always putting masking tape on it and controlling it. So I'm trying to get an even flow as much as I can. And then, too, you can always lift up your paper. And then if you lift it up, and then the paints will run down so you can kind of bleed it together a little bit. The more water you add, the more translucent the color is going to be, less vibrant. And at this point, it doesn't matter on here. I just want to see you practicing and using the brushes and getting comfortable with what you're doing so you can kind of see your options on what it's going to make. I do move fast and I do talk a lot because I'm giving you lots of information. So if you get lost or misunderstand, please just raise your hand and then I'll know how to address you and go from there. So, after you get that done, I would like you to find a round brush. A round brush is curved like this. I'm going to get it wet. And we're going to work with some brush strokes so you can see how your brush will work with fat lines and skinny lines. So on this example, I don't know if you can see it clearly. This is done with a flat brush where it's square. And then with the skinnier brush, I'm going to get longer lines. So I'm going to pick a different color, and in the area next to it, I'm going to push down with my brush to get a fat area. And then as I'm pulling my brush through, I'm going to come up and I'm going to create a skinnier line. So you're trying to get comfortable by pushing down, and twisting your brush is another idea. But I want to see how you can work with your brush and feel comfortable getting from the fat lines to the skinny lines. If you hold your brush up and down like a soldier, you can have a very fat round brush like this one. This is my girl. This is my favorite brush. Nobody uses her. But I love her because I can create so many different lines with her when you get into watercoloring, if that's your gig. And I can make something really fat. And then if I hold it straight up and down like a soldier, as I said, I can get a very, very, very fine line. So you want to be able to know how to hold your brushes when you push down to get that fat line, or holding it straight up to get skinny lines. So you're just playing with some lines. We're creating non-objective art right now, meaning we're not making anything specific, and we're just learning the techniques and colors. So you're learning what colors you have in your palette. If you are missing a color, we'll figure that out here shortly, but you should have a red. Some of you have a brown or a magenta, and then we'll talk about that, but seeing how the colors look, and if you add the more water, like I said, you're going to get a very transparent or lighter color than it being more opaque. So that's what I wanted you to play with the round brush. And then I'm going to take that same round brush. Remember that wash we just did? And then we're going to do a wet on wet right now. So I'm going to take another color. I'm going to use red. See if it's still wet. And then see when I put the paint in there, see how it's moving away from in certain areas. So you're just making lines like vines. You can make wavy lines. You can try like palm trees and wisp stuff. It doesn't matter really what you're doing. You're just seeing if it bleeds into it. And if it's not mixing like over here, see where it's really wet over here and how I'm getting this bleed look. And then it's more defined over here because I'm putting a wet on dry. And over here I'm doing wet on wet. And I'm going to show you another wet technique. Now, do you see how I did this look right here? This is dry brush. So I have less water on my brush to get that texture or to get that look. That's great for trees. It's good for landscape. It's good for texture on animals. Your paper towels are going to be your best friend. So we're going to work on that too. And when I am choosing a color or a way of doing something, I will dip my brush into the paint. And then if I'm not sure, because I want to have it specifically not too dark, not too light, make sure my brush isn't too soupy, I create it by putting my brush and just tapping my paper towel to say, that doesn't look right. Maybe I want to add a little more yellow to it, and that's the shade I want, and then I can mix it. Now, okay.
Like the wet and dry.
So what we're going to do is do another wet on wet. If you have another part of this paper again, and we're just going to get it wet, we're going to talk about wet on wet again. So what we're going to do is get part of our paper wet in the corner or use another one. I gave everybody lots of those little squares, and I have more, so don't worry about it. So I'm just using clear water, and I'm getting this section of my paper wet. Now I'm going to choose a color. I'm using teal, and then I'm going to drop a line or draw a line through it and see how it just runs and bleeds like science. So I want you to experiment by putting the water in on your paper and then using a color of your choice to see it bleed. Is anybody new to watercolors? Okay. You can use the same brush. I suggest to use any brush you want and try playing with your brushes. This is your time to experiment. What does this brush look like? How fat can I get my lines? How skinny can I get my lines? And there's different types of brushes. So you have the flat brushes and the round brushes. So it's up to you to try and play with it a little bit. So right now I want you to kind of explore that wet on wet. When the paint dries, have you guys ever seen a watercolor where it's very intricate and it's very detailed and it looks like there's lots of depth to it? And that is because they're glazing. Glazing is where you let this paint dry and then I add another color. I let it dry and then I'm adding another color, another design. So it just keeps layering upon itself in certain areas. So that's how you get the depth and the shadowing on certain things as well. So you just want to make sure that you're just breathing and smiling. And if you're struggling, you just raise your hand. We'll come around and help you. And go drink some Brave juice. Help yourself to the wine. And I do have water bottles for people that just came in. And for new people that came in, my name is Janessa, and Christine is walking around to help. We're both watercolorists, and we're both instructors. So we're here to help. And then if you are very experienced in watercolors, you can create whatever you want, and then hopefully you learn a new technique. I want to introduce you to many things. So that's your wet on wet, and then I would like to introduce, on that wet and wet, you can use a different color on top of it. This is creating your layering in the wet on wet, and it will bleed in and create another color. And then you can even put light colors over it. And your paper towels are to absorb the extra water, moisture in your brush if you need it to be more fine and not so juicy. The paper towels are good for seeing what color is really going to come off your brush, so you can use that. You have a white oil pastel at your table. So on another piece of paper, when you're ready, push hard, and you're going to draw a design of your choice. I'm just going to draw a simple branch. And I'm going to take my fat brush, and then when you paint over it, this is called wax resist. So wherever you put your white oil pastel, it's not going to stick to it. So this is a great trick. If you decide to make the seahorse today, you can draw his outline of all the detail in his body with a white oil pastel, and then when you paint over it, you don't have to worry about it. So there's many different options on keeping white space and creating texture. As you see, it does give a textured look of a rough surface, and on the edges, we have the smooth surface. And then also on this paper, if you have room on that one, I have given you, let's see, what do I want to do? Like I said, I change my mind a lot. So I'm just giving you a second to catch up a minute. I don't know how good this camera is. Do you see how this is speckled in here? That's salt. So salt is an option you can use today. Salt will be the very, very, very last thing that we use today because you do not want to paint over salt. One, it ruins the brushes, and two, it ruins the look. And you don't need to brush it off, but the salt is a way to create texture. So now we're going to do something called puddling. What I'm going to do is create another shape with my brush with water. I'm going to use a little bit of blue in my brush so you can see where I would be putting clear water, okay? So pretend I'm using clear water. Parts of it will be. Wherever I put the water, the paint is going to go. Now I'm using skinny lines and experimenting with my brush. And then I'm going to pick up a color, and then I'm just going to drop it in, and it's going to take off where I put it. If you put other colors next to it, but this is called puddling. So I put a big puddle of water where I want it, and now I can add these different colors, and it will follow the trail. So you will use this technique creating your main project. This is a really important one, I think, and putting your colors next to each other and letting the watercolor do its work. So we controlled where it's going to go, and then we let them dance within those boundaries. The next thing that you might want to know, and like I said, everything I'm just saying, and I'm letting you explore. If you need another sheet of paper, you just let us know. Put some of these up here. Do I have any questions so far? Okay. Does anyone need help? Okay. On your third piece of paper, what I want to experiment with is using the bubble wrap. Oh, I didn't give you bubble wrap. I gave you tissue. It's also called lifting. You can use this with a paper towel or tissue paper. Lifting is important for many reasons. One, it cleans up if you have a, oops, I messed up. And two, it helps lighten areas, so if it's too dark. And then it also creates texture. So it's a threefold process. So on my paper, I'm going to create a area where I'm going to create a flat wash, or it could be a gradient. I'm using a lot of water. I'm using a lot of paint. If you want your paint to be darker, you don't need to dig your brush into the paints. You're just holding it in there longer. A brush has reservoirs in it, so the bristles are sucking up that color and taking on as long as you hold it in there. So you're going to have more paint in the brush. And then you can get to have that to be darker. So I don't have a light orange. I have a nice orange going on here. And then I'm going to take my tissue paper. I gave you guys tissue paper. You don't have to use the whole thing. You can tear it in half so you have more for later. And of course, I have tons more, so who cares if you ruin it. And just so you know as well, I'm going to put a trash can right here. So if you need a trash can, do that. Bathrooms are down this hall if you need those. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to set down my tissue paper in a ball form and just see if it pulls up some stuff. You can also lay it flat like so. And then you pull it straight up. So when I use paper towel, I do the same thing, but it just can create some different texture. And you might see a little bit of something. Okay, it's not working very good on this one. but mine's really, really, really wet. I think it needs to be less wet. So all it does is it creates just a different, if you're looking for texture, it's just a different way of doing texture. Another way of doing texture, which I do not have, let me get one. A sponge. I gave you guys sea sponges. I drove all the way to Tarpon Springs to get these for you. What a bummer for me. What a cool town. So with the sea sponges, what you want to do is dip it in your water and get it wet. And I just squeeze it out. So I have a wet sea sponge. And I do not dip my sea sponge into the paints. Don't dig your brush in my paints and don't dip the sponge in the paints. So what you do is I take my big brush and I will paint color on it. And then you can also combine color. So I'm taking my big brush and I'm just painting on my sea sponge. And then I'm dipping it onto my paper, and then you can have different textures. And sometimes when you do this in art, and then I'm going to show you on the wet and wet, so you can put it inside of a wet area and it will bleed a little bit and lighten it. So this is a way of creating sea coral. It's great for ocean. It's great. It's really great for anything. Just make sure your sea sponge is wet first. The next and last thing I'm going to show you, and then we're going to get started on doing some more things. And if you need another piece of paper, just let us know. And of course, I want you to understand this is a supply area over here. So you're welcome to get up and help yourself. I have different brushes over here. I have also bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is good for creating texture. And sometimes I like to paint on the bubble wrap and then press down. And usually I'll do a flat wash if I'm doing a texture of like the sea turtle. And then I paint on here and press down like stamping. So one thing, the last thing I'm going to teach you or show you, say you want to paint the sea turtle or the seahorse. It has sections on it because we have all this white space. So I could take all this white space from this sea turtle and I could draw that all with oil pastels and then just paint over it. Or I can control it myself by using the appropriate size brush. So this small little flat brush you have, this is great for the sea turtle and this is good for the seahorse and of course other things. So how we talked about printmaking and how you hold your brush. If you use this as a square, I'm just pushing down and then I'm going to leave space. You can also pull it through and create squares or rectangles. You can also create thin lines. You can also twist it. So I want you to experiment using this. This brush has a screwy thing on it. That's okay though. So I can push down as I'm dragging, and then I'm going to lift it straight up and down like a soldier, and I can twist it, and then I can get it skinny again, and then I can lay it down and get it fat again. So the basic concept you want to be comfortable with and learn is how to use the brush and what can the brush do. There's some people that call it, I don't know, is it stroke painting or something? One stroke. So you're putting 2 different colors on your brush, but this is good for floral. So maybe some of you want to do a floral design today. That's great. So you can take your round brush and you can just push down on it, and then I have 2 different colors on here. and lifting it up, and then you can create leaves or petals. Thank you. Oh, because I zoomed in for the sea turtle. Thank you. You got to keep me on my toes, ladies. I need help. So using your brushes, whether square or round, you can load them up and then figure out just holding them down flat. So of course I'm holding my brush like this now and putting it in different areas. See how you can go around and make petals. And then you can pull out from that paint too and create skinnier lines. So it's just getting comfortable with how am I going to use the brush. Proper technique of holding your brush is usually by the metal rim, by the handle. And then if you want to experiment using these little guys I gave you, you can do that too. And leaving some space. So if you want to really do a lot of detail, but you don't want your colors to mix, you got to leave a little bit of white space because it's going to touch. If you feel like you've made a mistake, you can take a piece of paper towel and I lay it down flat. I need this to be lighter, it was too dark, and then I'm lifting it straight up. And then you can see how much it lightens stuff. So you understand that purple, blue, and red are very staining, so you might not get that all out of your paper. So you really want to think before you draw. And another rule I have, an ideal, a philosophy, there's no mistake in art. If you feel like you made a mistake, it's just an opportunity for you to make something else. So don't forget to breathe and don't forget to smile, because that's what's going to make you grow, okay? That's why you're here, yes? To try something new, to play with something, to get out of the house, meet new people. So what I would like to offer to you now is your choices again. Like I said, the watercolor terms we talked about are up here for you to take home. We're going to come through and get you guys some clean water as well. What I am going to provide for you is I'm going to give everybody a board. And you see how this is taped around the edges? This is called masking. Masking blocks the paint from touching that paper. Let's see if I have an example for you. And then when we're done, we're going to peel the tape off carefully, and you get a nice white border around your picture. So like this fish, do you see how there's the border going around it? So that's because I put that masking tape on there. Now if you had, and you don't have to just use masking tape for the outside edges. See how I have these white rectangles in here? That's because I put down masking tape in all these little white areas, and then I painted my picture, and after it dried, I took the tape off and it left those white areas, and then I could paint over it again. So this is just a non-objective piece. So you can learn to control your artworks. Also, this is a nice border. I like this one, although it ran because I was standing when I was painting it, so everything runs downhill, I guess they say. But you don't have to paint your whole picture. So I painted this nautilus shell in this class I was teaching, and then I painted this blue around. So when I took that tape off, I got that nice border, and then I put salt in here, so I got a little bit of a texture. So I just want to make sure that you understand all your options. You can keep something simple, and you do not have to paint your background. These are just ideas. You can make things sporadic, so you have random areas. What makes good artwork as well is contrast. That's another important thing. So you want to have really dark areas and light areas. Now, it doesn't apply to everything, but if you kind of squint your eye, you can see how there's dark and light areas in this. That's what makes it successful. And some are just more muted. This one doesn't have a lot of variety, but that's the muted look I wanted. Like I said, there's no wrong way in art. It just depends on what you're doing and thinking. And as I tell my clients, I don't have just one horse picture. I've got 50. Do I like all of my paintings? No. I painted this week. No. So it's just an emotional thing. Art is important even if you're not an artist, and I teach it to different people because it connects your left and your right brain. Art makes you smarter, art is healing, and it's good to try something new, as we agree. That's why you're here, yes? Are we doing okay? Are we doing okay? Yes. Okay, great. Anybody need anything? I got wine, water, anything. Okay. I have a t-shirt that says something about that. Like I'm an artist because I put my paintbrush in my coffee. It should have said wine. And then at the end of class, if you do like, I'm selling mats too today for $5. So if you do like your piece and you want to put it in a mat, that's an option as well. So I'm going to pass out the boards. Now, while I'm passing out the boards, if you're not ready to go to your board yet, if you're not ready for your final, because I'm going to have you come up here, I'm going to lay everything out on this table for the samples. You're going to come up here to this table and you're going to get what you want to draw, because this is how this is going to work. Actually, I'll have you come get these too. So, you have regular watercolor paper. This is 9 by 12. The 9 by 12 that's taped is going to be right here. I also have half sheets, and then I also have these small ones. This is your workshop, so you can decide. With that being said, then, I'm going to give you some ideas. So if you wanted to do the flamingo, I don't know how to draw a flamingo. Well, what you can do, I always give my clients reference pages so you can see what you're doing, okay? Then I brought you cheating tools. Here's my cheating tools. Some of the flamingos I already have, so if you want to make something like this, do you see the sponge? Can you guys see that far? So this one I drew with Sharpie. I do have Sharpies because I like pen and ink just to do it something differently. So I do have those. Some of these flamingos, I have started the starting points for you so you can look at a picture and kind of put it together. Like, oh, I can't do that. Then I also have pictures and artwork of bigger flamingos like this. And I have a cheating tool called carbon paper. So what we're going to do is tape the carbon paper. You just take a pencil and you're just tracing the outline. You want to practice with the carbon paper or understand if you do the tracing of this or even the sea turtle, which is, I have a basic outline. So if you want to do the sea turtle, I just give you some carbon paper and then you're going to trace on your watercolor paper. But make sure you practice maybe and draw lightly. You do not want to push hard with the carbon paper. And I don't really give my clients erasers. And when I draw with my children, because I teach ages 3 through adult, my little guys, they have to draw with Sharpie. You had made a mistake? Okay, we're going to make it into something else. So you got to think before you draw. So carbon paper, so up here, you guys can come up here and look at these things. I'm going to lay this all out. And you can talk to me and tell me what you want to do. Yes, please.
All right, I just want to point out to everyone, for instance, if you take her flamingo, and you outline the flamingo, okay? And you take your paintbrush, your narrow paintbrush, all right? Like I traced my flamingo, I'm gonna take my narrow paintbrush. When you put the water, it's not like you're gonna just dip in paint and start painting, okay? Watercolors aren't like acrylics, you don't just start painting. What you do is, you'll take a clean brush with water and you'll dampen in that line the shape. Then you'll touch the paint. And when you touch that damp paper, just like she showed you, the color's gonna flow. Because you don't want like your flamingo head and neck to look like you went with paint. You're dampening in the lines, and then you're dabbing the paint, and the paint's gonna just flow in there.
And then if you, oh, sorry.
And you can layer, like let it dry or add some more, okay? So acrylic paints are different. If you've done acrylic paints, poster paints, whatever, you know, we brush, we go like this, and we draw, we brush. Watercolors move with the water, as she was showing you, right? So if you want the nice flow, the mix of color, the drama, your paper needs to be wet. And that's how you get that flow. Once it dries, just like she showed you, you go back in, let's pretend this was just flat, kind of flat paint. Then I go in with the dry paper and I do my detail.
That's how I got the feathers on this over here, because I put in the water and then I put in the pink magenta. I tested the color saturation of how dark I wanted this on a paper towel, because it can get this dark and this light, but you do want contrast. So then I put yellows and oranges. So with a flamingo, if you do that, you want to use pink, purple, or at least yellow and orange. And then I am more of an impressionistic artist, so I'm a little more brushstrokey with some of my looks. And also, I don't use black. If you want shadows, we use blues and purples. One thing I would like you to work on doing as well is this little tray that I gave you. What you're going to do is you're going to make colors in here. We do not have gray, but to make gray, you mix blue with brown. So I'm just putting a little bit of colors in here. I wanted to do a lighter green, so I mixed green and yellow. I wanted more of a turquoise color, so I mixed green and blue. I put my magenta in here when I did my flamingo, so I could control how dark or light it was. So I made a really light pink, and then I made a dark pink. And then I made a pink with a yellow in it. So this is your mixing tray. So this is your friend too. So if you know what you want to do, you can come up here and get ideas. The seahorse, if you wanted to make a seahorse, I have the stencils for this guy, so you can trace that with a stencil. And those are my 4 options. The octopus, that, now I'm not saying you're stuck with that, and you can do whatever you want if you have other ideas. And then just don't forget to make your own colors. And draw lightly. You want to do the sea turtle? And then do you want to trace them?
I think I'm gonna try to draw, but
Okay. And I also, just guys up here, I have just copy paper up here, so if you just want to sketch out an idea or practice first, come get a piece of white paper here.